city of Cyprus in 300 BC, there lived a exceptionally well-off dealer called Zeno, whereas on a voyage from Phoenicia to Piraeus, his vessel sank along with all of his cargo. Since of that single occasion, an occasion that was completely out of Zeno's or anyone's control, this exceptionally affluent man all of a sudden got to be destitute in a moment. Envision you were Zeno. How would you respond to your whole life's work getting flushed down the deplete by the sheer drive of nature? What is the legitimate response? Would you be irate, pitiful? Would you feel life has cheated you? For most of us, these would all be typical responses, but not for Zeno, the father of Stoicism. One little altar keeps going in forever, and one little reframing of your attitude can cascade into bigger and more impactful changes afterward down the line. The center of Stoicism is the exceptionally definition of acknowledgement and lack of concern. After perusing the works of Socrates and other awesome logicians, Zeno made an instruct Stoicism, agreeing to Zeno, in spite of the fact that we do not have much control over what happens to us, we do have control of how it influences us, and we must utilize this control to extraordinary impact, or maybe then crying over spilled drain, or in this case, suffocated products. Zeno centered on keeping up his composure over the circumstance, remaining calm and impartial, in spite of his pickle. Nowadays, individuals accidentally see Stoics as individuals who cannot be broken, individuals who do not regularly wade to the passionate extremes, going through things like fits of seethe or bouts of uneasiness. But the unique thought behind Stoicism was much more than that. Rather than fare a way to depict individuals who are apathetic, Stoicism was a way to see, portray, and get at the world. It was a way of life, and that way of life has endured for centuries. Stolid reasoning can be connected to circumstances nowadays, the same way it was connected thousands of a long time back, and its benefits are fair as impactful. Stoicism permits us to handle these negative feelings from negative encounters and turn them into the contemplations that deliver us a one-of-a-kind viewpoint of the world. Viewpoint is everything, and everybody in the world has diverse encounters and hence distinctive viewpoints on things. Since the Stoics assembled, talked about, and instructed reasoning in an open put, their common reasoning was broadly known. They accepted that the impassive standards seem incredibly advantage anybody and everybody, and so it didn't make sense for them to stow away that information behind the four dividers of a school or of the royal residence patios. As a result, everybody from slave to head may learn and ended up impassive, and they did. A few of the world's most striking Stoics incorporate Epictetus, which deciphers to obtained, as he was once claimed as a slave, Seneca, who was a well-renowned statesman, and Marcus Aurelius, a Roman sovereign, and one of the most effective men to have ever lived. The early Stoics practiced what they lectured, maintaining a strategic distance from all shapes of isolation, and driving the battle against disparity. They indeed concocted the word Catholic, which actually implies citizen of the world. When individuals listen that word presently, we think of cities like modern York, Toronto, Dubai, and London, since of how different they are. This was the sort of solidarity and harmony that the Stoics lectured, indeed at a time when it wasn't prevalent. Women were permitted to unreservedly learn around Stoicism and gotten to be Stoics themselves. So why do so numerous individuals receive Stoicism as a way of life? In a world full of startling turns of occasions, our feelings can tend to get in the way of things. In reality, we do not truly get pitiful since terrible things happen to us. We get pitiful since startling awful things happen to us. Rain is a great thing, It makes a difference to water our plants, gives water for animals, and keeps the temperature cool and sticky. But the truth is, when that dim cloud catches you exterior without an umbrella, it's never a great involvement. So why do not we begin crying once it begins to rain? It's since in spite of the fact that the circumstance is terrible, we've learned to anticipate rain. It's something that is unavoidable. We can't control the climate, in spite of the fact that it sucks. The rain passes and the light returns. Stoicism educates us that, in the same way, we ought to anticipate that everything awful that can happen will happen. Picture the most noticeably awful result, and be substance knowing it might happen. One of the impassive works out is known as intentional distress, and work out pointed at expanding sentiments of appreciation. Rest on the floor of your kitchen, taking cold showers when you regularly take hot ones. Eat nothing but potatoes for a few days. Things like this. This workout makes a difference you to get it that no matter how difficult it gets, you'll still survive and possibly flourish if your mentality is right. By being able to withstand these awkward circumstances, we in a roundabout way get ready our mental for future mishaps. With the current state of the world, where promotions are always being pushed down our throats, we're made to accept that if we do not have the another best thing, see a certain way, or make a certain sum of cash, that we will never be upbeat. This message is more critical presently than ever. We enter the world not knowing much of anything. We develop up being instructed things at domestic, in school, and by watching the world for ourselves. The thing is, a parcel of times, all three of these sources of information instruct us in distinctive ways. The address is, do we require to internalize all of this information? If we do, we might unconsciously be setting unlikely desires for our lives, clearing out us eventually disillusioned and unsatisfied in the conclusion. That's no way to live. We ought to instead center on moving forward ourselves, for ourselves. We ought to do things for ourselves, and as it were for that reason, joining any outside trust or auxiliary connections to the activities we take nearly continuously lead to dissatisfaction. Most of the time, we conclusion up attempting to fulfill that vacancy with outside things, blowing all your cash on a favorite car, a house, or indeed beginning a family. Now and then, we do all of these things for their outside esteem and not their inside esteem. But Stoicism instructs that, if you approach life this way, you put your joy in the hands of outside powers, powers that can continuously come up short. Cars nearly continuously break down. Characteristic fiascos wipe absent whole cities, and separate rates climb higher and higher each year. But indeed, the free things in life come at a fetched. The fetch of space, both physical and mental, as Seneca once composed. Instead, we must put our joy on our inborn esteem as people and on nothing we have or can physically secure. We must select to do our best to keep a cool head in any case of what life tosses at us, since notwithstanding of what it is we need, at the conclusion of the day, we do not have any control over the larger part of things that happen to us. But we do have all the control over how we respond to those things. That is the division of control, the most imperative rule in impassive logic. Stoics instruct that we must learn to isolate it, what we control from what we cannot control. We require to decide our esteem not from things we can control, but from the things we can. Endeavoring towards objectives is a great characteristic. But breaking down when those things do not go your way is, in a Stoic's point of view, making YouTube recordings is, well, a part simpler than being a Roman sovereign, but it can still demonstrate to be challenging some of the time. To begin with, You must shape your thought, which takes until the end of time. At that point, investigate that thought. Scrap it since it sucks. Begin over. Script the video, make the video, alter it, make the title, thumbnail, and everything else. Sometime recently you hit transfer. Everything up until the point where you tap transfer is all up to you. Be that as it may, once you tap that transfer button, the control shifts to the YouTube calculation. Still, a parcel of individuals judge the victory of their YouTube channel or Instagram account based on how numerous seasoned supporters they have, measurements of which, for the most portion, are past your control. Stoics instruct that instead, you ought to judge the victory of your work based on the sum of exertion you put in, and not on the result of your outside trusts. Believe the handle. Think almost an individual who has been working difficult at their work for the past 6 months. He presently feels he merits a advancement, and so he strolls up to his boss with his execution report. The boss says much obliged, doesn't allow him the advancement, and he goes domestic considering he must suck at his work. He doesn't consider that the boss might have essentially woken up irate. Somebody else might have been superior qualified at the time, or perhaps the company was fair losing cash and couldn't manage it. He doesn't know the reason, but he's still disturbed. If he basically put his esteem on the quality of the execution report he turned in, kept doing what he was doing to win the advancement he needed, he might have been much more joyful generally. With the right viewpoint, his objective wouldn't have been lessened, but fair delayed. It's this reframing of your attitude that is vital. A genuine Stoic does not see their triumphs based on the monetary pick-up of their wonders, but is comforted by the truth that they can live a comfortable life without all the things cash can purchase. These are the 4 primary excellencies of Stoicism: shrewdness, boldness, restraint, and equity. Intelligence is being able to partition between what is inside and what is outside, and the capacity to select our response to the things that happen to us. As Viktor Frankl said, between boost and reaction, there is a space, and that space is our control to select our reaction. Metal to words, hold on and stand up to. Restraint, or balance, is what I fair did there. Doing more with less, saying more with less words, whereas Jeff Bezos and Elon Musk are battling at the beat of the Forbes list. Stoics accept that the restraint of riches ought to essentially be having what is basic, and at that point having what is sufficient. Equity is the most critical of all the ethics. It instrument that no one ought to do hurt to another, since we were all born for each other, to do great to one another, and not to ourselves. Nelson Mandela was one of the most celebrated African pioneers in the world. While he was battling against apartheid, he got sentenced to life detainment, where he remained for 27 a long time. Sometime recently, at long last being discharged. When he was discharged from jail, he was chosen president of South Africa, and in this way, numerous individuals thought he was going to brutally rebuff all the individuals that had anything to do with apartheid or his detainment. But of course, he did not. All through his time in jail, Mandela studied the works of Marcus Aurelius and learning numerous of the center values of Stoicism, all of which he practiced all through his life. Instead of calling for the heads of the credence, Nelson Mandela encouraged his individuals to instead look for the inverse, to unwind and modify. He pushed that the past was presently past their control, and that the as it were thing they may do was discover a way to move forward and construct a superior country. This is the way of the impassive. In modern-day medication, Stoicism is at the center of strategies, like judicious emotive behavioral treatment and logotherapy, REBT makes a difference. Patience to distinguish negative thought designs that might be causing passionate and behavioral issues. It permits you to challenge the thinking behind all these negative contemplations with rationale. And when you realize that numerous of them are unwarranted, you can at that point supplant them with more beneficial and more advantageous convictions. Symbol treatment, on the other hand, is based on the solid guideline that people are driven by reason. Indeed, in the darkest of circumstances, we can fill our lives with meaning and joy by essentially finding out what that reason is. As numerous of us know, in spite of the fact that this is less demanding said than done, it's a handle. Much like everything else, we have to rewire the way we think, out with the ancient, in with the modern, to settle our issues with joy. We must hone self-worth by diverting our definition of esteem to the things that we can control. We can halt getting focused on the things we cannot control, and by and large, we can lead a much more joyful and more satisfying life. Stoicism makes a difference. Us control through past and show storms into calmer and more quiet waters. And if our transport sinks and we all suffocate, we can take peace in the truth that we lived a great life, yet not as long as we had trusted. Since keep in mind, everything has an conclusion.